Welcome to Fast Keto. I'm your host, Ketogenic Girl. Did you know that you actually have the option to either be a sugar burner or a fat burner? It's called having a metabolic advantage, as Dr. Ben Beekman would put it. You can actually burn your own stored body fat for fuel. On this show, we talk about ketogenesis, fasting, biohacking, all with the goal of optimal body composition for longevity and having the highest possible quality of life. I hope you enjoy these interviews and solo casts that I present to you, all with this goal in mind. So I want to tell you about a brand new company that I just found out about called eMeals. What they do is offer a service that makes it a little bit easier to follow any kind of lifestyle. They've been doing it with paleo for a while and with other kinds of diet and lifestyle, and they just launched a brand new one for keto. So what they do is they have a keto plan which includes dietitian-approved meals and targets the right macros for you. And the meals are easy to make and taste amazing. What happens is each week you get 7 dinners, 1 breakfast, 1 lunch, and 1 dessert. And that connects directly to a smart shopping list with online grocery pickup and delivery options. And that saves you time and money. So the meal plan directly connects to the shopping list, and you can go through this app that they have and pick out meals that you like, recipes you like, kind of customize and build your meal for the week. And it will take that, send it to your local grocery that does deliveries, and the groceries will show up at your door, and then you have the recipes in the app that you can make meals from during the week. So I think they offer a really great service. It really enables you to save time and money because of being directly connected to your local grocery store with this smart shopping list. It's a subscription-based app, and you also get access to other bonus collections of keto recipes from different keto authors and other influencers in the space that specialize in the keto space. 4-week keto is all you really need to maintain a ketogenic diet on their easy-to-use platform. So go to emeals.com/keto today, and you'll get a 14-day trial if you want to test them out. That's emeals.com/keto, and check them out. Let me know if you like the service, what you think of it. If it's something that you found helpful for you, I would love to know. So be sure to go check them out. I definitely recommend this as a fantastic app and service. Hey guys, welcome back to Fast Keto. This episode is a solo cast where I'm answering lots of your burning questions. And whenever I put out a post about questions, I usually get, like with this one, about 150 to 200 of them. And so I try to just condense them into certain recurring themes. But it's also hard to get really in depth with more than 5 or 6 of those major themes when I'm doing these episodes. So I'm going to probably make this a 2-part episode, and I'll release part 1 this week. It may even be 3 parts. We'll see how many I can get to, but I'd really like to be able to answer all the questions that are posted whenever I put out a call for them. It's an interesting challenge to be able to take about 150 or 200 questions and put them into, 15 or so major themes, but I'll try to answer the ones that I see recurring the most. And it may not be the one that you particularly asked, but it might be one that sounds kind of similar to yours. So just keep in mind, I'm trying to answer all of them, and that really is my goal. Anytime I put out a post asking for questions, I had someone comment that they put a question last time and it didn't get answered. And I totally understand how that feels. My goal is to answer all of them. It's not always possible, but just know that if I didn't answer yours directly, I'm trying my best. And I'm also may be answering someone else's that sounds very similar to yours because I am condensing it into these themes. And one thing I'd love to ask you guys for is for feedback on these episodes. It's so fun to do these podcasts. I really enjoy them, but it is this one way medium where, I'm speaking out into this void. And so it really helps me to get feedback on what you guys liked, what you want to hear more of, what kinds of topics you want me to talk about, which guests you'd like me to have on. I had someone yesterday who I was interacting with on Instagram, which is typically where I probably do most of the interactions because it's my most active, it's my favorite, social media platform. I love connecting with people and our keto community there. But Ketone Body was commenting with me, and I asked her what she loved so much about the podcast, and what she said that it would be cool to hear more success stories from people who've had weight loss success with your program and keto in general. And I do actually have a guest lined up who is a sort of a prominent figure now in the carnivore space. She did my program a couple of years ago, and that's Nevada Gray, and she's going to be coming on to talk about the success that she had with my program. But if you've done the 28-day challenge and you would like to come on and talk about it, I have had so many incredible success stories. One of these days, I'm going to put together like a total number of pounds lost, just because it's hard to calibrate and add up other kinds of benefits, like amount of medication you've gone off, or, amount of joy that you feel. It's kind of hard to quantify those things, but, I'm sure that there have been thousands and thousands of unwanted pounds of fat shed from people's bodies, and so much health gained in that process from the program. And I'd love to talk more about that on the show. And also people's success stories just with keto in general. Now, one thing I want to stress as we start this episode is that a lot of people talk about struggles that they have doing keto. And one of the issues that I see out there is that there's lots of different ways of doing keto. So although we do have certain macronutrient distributions as kind of guidelines, there's a lot of books written about what keto is. I think it's really important to continually repeat and define what keto is. A lot of people do keto differently. There's kind of a large spectrum. Ketogenesis is a metabolic process that occurs in the body when the body makes ketones during the process of burning stored body fat for fuel. So that's typically the definition of what ketogenesis is. So we get ketones appearing in the body that can be measured by the blood, by urine, by breath, because they're a byproduct of our fat stores being burned for fuel. And ketones don't typically appear when one is not fat fueled. When someone is primarily a sugar burner and not a fat burner, they don't typically see ketones because ketones are only processed as a byproduct of burning body fat. People can do certain things and tweak them, like taking exogenous ketones. You can take exogenous ketones and then your blood or other markers will register ketones, but it's from the ketones that you just ingested. So I've always really focused on getting into ketogenesis from a dietary perspective, from limiting your starches, controlling carbohydrates. It really is the biggest lever when it comes to getting into ketosis. And that's why we see a lot of overlap between people having success on keto and having success with fasting, and also having success with adding in ketones or doing very high fat percentage diets, because all of these things generally, except for adding in exogenous ketones, restrict and control carbohydrates and starches. But especially a keto diet, if done properly, usually at 5% or so of total caloric intake coming just from carbohydrates. And people usually see really good results with intermittent fasting and longer fasting too, because again, you're controlling for carbohydrates and starches. So that's really what keto is. It is this state in the body that is a metabolic state that is defined by the presence of ketones and that is achieved by the control of starches or carbohydrates. So I really like to just touch on that before we get into some of the themes and questions, because I think that sometimes we see a lot of recurring themes with issues that people have doing keto. And I think it's because there's a lot of misunderstanding still about what keto is, how to do it properly, how to do it in a healthy way. And I love talking about this. I talk about this in my book, how I gained 20 pounds when I first went keto, which was the opposite of my goal at the time. I was doing keto to lose fat and also some autoimmune issues, but it mostly was to burn fat and lose weight. And I gained 20 pounds. It didn't deter me though. I knew that there was something to being a fat burner, and I knew that I could figure it out. I knew that if this was a scientific process, that if I studied it and I applied myself to it and I tested, it's one of the reasons if you followed me for a while, you've always seen me emphasize testing. It's because it's how I learn. It doesn't mean I think everyone out there needs to be testing for ketosis, but it is a way that helped me personally learn about my body, to connect with my body, and also learn so that I can share valuable information for other people on what are the things that really move the needle in terms of getting and seeing results. Because I hate it when I see someone who says, I've been doing keto all this time and I haven't lost any weight, or I've gained weight, or I'm not feeling good. And they're not getting any of these great results that you can get from being fat-fueled, from being a fat burner. And that's why I created my program in the first place, to be able to support and coach people as they try and do keto and have a framework that everyone has the same one and they can understand, okay, this is one approach to keto that is really effective. It's tried and tested and proven. And I can also provide support as we go along. And for anyone who is not doing my program, I try to provide a lot of free resources in my free ebook, which is available at ketogenicgirl.com. On this very podcast, on my YouTube channel, I'm always doing stories and sharing anything that I think could be helpful. So let's dive into the questions. I had this great question from Daphne, otherwise known as Serendipity, on Instagram, and I've known Daphne for a while. She did my program, I believe it was a few years ago, but she asked a great question. I'm number one, I'll laugh out loud. How long did it take you to tweak everything? And when I asked a follow-up question, she said, by tweaking, getting macros correct for your body and blood sugar and everything, the tweaking process can be a challenge. It's worth it, but it's a challenge. So Daphne, I love your question. I definitely think it's a great question, and it's not one that I see asked all the time, but I would say that it probably took me about a year of being really committed to doing keto and learning about it for me to tweak everything and really dial it in for myself in a way that I was able to create the program based on that. I was able to have experimented enough that I saw, okay, this is where results really seem to switch on. And there have been studies done on keto diets where it really is at certain levels of total carbohydrate per day where that switch turns on, that fat burning switch turns on. And I think for different people, there are different possibilities in terms of, what your activity level is, what your, how much exercise do you do or not do, what your metabolic health is and status is. There's so many different variables depending on the person. So we are very special, unique snowflakes in our own way, but there is also a lot of commonality in our biology. And that's why we're able to study biology and biochemistry and all these processes. The process where the body makes glucose from new substrates, gluconeogenesis, or the process where the body, burns fat or makes new fat, either in lipogenesis or lipolysis. These processes are all the same across the board, across every body. And our metabolism might be different. There are certain variables depending on our activity level. Like I said, metabolic status and health and your overall sort of food intake, or your how much have you dieted throughout your life versus not dieting at all. There are certain variables that affect things. So I do like to say that there is a process of tweaking things, of figuring things out, of kind of dialing them in. I have some people who try my program and they get results instantly. They get results right away without really having to tweak anything. And then I do see other people where it does take time. A lot of that time also is restoring your body's homeostasis by getting out of the way. So you're providing your body with all the essential nutrients that it needs, the essential macronutrients, the essential micronutrients, so that you can get out of the way and let your body take over. Your body has got this. It knows how to get you back into homeostasis because that's its main program, and its main priority is to maintain homeostasis. Anytime we are experiencing stress, that's the body being out of its homeostasis, out of its balance. And we talk a lot about balance for optimal health. And that's truly why I believe in the ketogenic diet so much. Is it's the only diet out there that really not only prioritizes the essential nutrients that our body needs. So, we have essential amino acids that we can't get from our endogenous mechanisms. We have to get them from external sources of protein. And we also have essential fats, which our body can't synthesize on their own. And we don't have the enzymes for. We have to get them from external sources. And there's also things like electrolytes, sodium, especially, that we need to get from external sources. Our body can't generate its own sodium. It can absorb it and it can retain it. And our kidneys do a great job of retaining electrolytes. But, there are certain essentials that we need to get from external sources. And keto not only prioritizes getting those essentials, but it also controls for and eliminates non-essentials, which to me are a large part represented by carbohydrates, because our body, there's no single essential carbohydrate that our body needs and cannot make on its own, because carbohydrate at its very basic molecular level is glucose, and our body can make glucose on demand. So glucose is very important for some of our organ function, but our body can make it, and it always maintains a small store of it. So to get back to your question, Daphne, I would say it took me about a year all in of doing a lot of different trialing, testing things, taking copious amounts of notes, journaling. But that doesn't mean that the tweaking process for me is over, because I'm a bit of a tweaker, experimenter, tinker, biohacker. I love to try different things. And for me, there's always a potential next level out there. Although I've really dialed things in for myself now, I love trying new things and new approaches and then learning from those. So I love doing short-term 20 or 30-day experiments, testing different things, seeing what the results are. Like in January, I went off of coffee for a month just to see, was there a connection for me there with, caffeine intake? Would I see a difference? And I just love testing different things like that. So what I really like about this question is that it highlights the fact that keto is not this overnight thing that, you can read one book and do everything the book says and you're going to get instant miraculous results. The reason I brought up homeostasis is that a lot of times we have weight gain or fat gain or retention or other health issues. I'm not going to spell every single one of them out, but anything related to chronic non-infectious disease, metabolic syndrome, or autoimmune conditions. And I believe that a lot of that is because we've displaced the essential nutrients that our body needs. And we've added in all of these things that the body doesn't recognize as natural foods and doesn't know what to do with them. And real food is something that your body instantly knows what it is. It hasn't really been modified from its original source. It can break it down easily, and it can assimilate it as new tissues, new cells, building blocks for new tissues and cells in our body. And keto really helps us do that, but it shouldn't be something that you're trying to do overnight. In my opinion, tweaking and being someone who's constantly open to trying new things and tweaking things and testing things out, while at the same time kind of finding what works for you, I think is a good combination. So very long-winded answer to your question, but I definitely think that it deserved it. So on to the next question. Shireen.ks asks, do you add healthy carbs prior to your period, or what do you do before that time? I asked a follow-up question asking what for. So I don't really have a lot of context for this question, but I don't add in healthy carbs prior to my period, and I don't add in anything special prior to my period. It's kind of similar question to, do you cycle in and out of ketosis? And I've been doing a keto diet for about 5 years. I don't cycle in and out of ketosis. That doesn't mean that that's for everyone, but I feel my best when I'm in a fat-filled state. I believe that being in a fat-filled state is how the body was designed to be. And it's how we have evolved over hundreds of thousands of years, is having metabolic flexibility to be both glucose and lipid burners. We can burn sugar and we can burn fat. And I primarily like to be in a fat-filled state because it's where my blood sugar is at its most stable. It's where I am always prioritizing the essential nutrients, the essentials being protein and fat. And I don't personally see any reason why one would need to add in carbs at any particular time of the month. I get my cycle regularly every month. My cycle's never been so regular as it has been since going keto, and I've never needed to add in any carbs or do anything magical or special around that time of the month. My body knows what it's doing, and it does it well. I provide it with all the building blocks that it needs to make all of its hormones, to make cholesterol, to make bile salts, to make all the protein and tissues that my body needs, to make strong bones, strong muscle. And so to answer your question, I don't add in anything such as healthy carbs prior to my period or do anything special. I know that around that time of the month, the only thing that really changes for me is sometimes I get a little bit more depleted. I tend to add in more electrolyte supplementation and sodium if I get a little bit tired because my hormones are low. I add in a lot of mindfulness, a lot of meditation, a lot of yoga, because it's a time that I become more self-reflective, more introverted. I tend to be more sensitive to things that people say and do around me. And it's really important for me personally to become more mindful than I am, to practice even more meditation and yoga so that I can be really aware and conscious of how I'm speaking to myself during that time, how I'm interpreting things that other people say and do during that time, and not taking anything personally more than any other day of the month, more than any other time of the month, because I know myself and I do tend to be really sensitive during that time. And I tend to take other people's actions a lot more personally. So it helps me to be mindful, and it helps me to take deep breaths. And if something someone does or says upsets me, to seek understanding and ask for clarification. Why did you do that? Or what is your motivation behind doing that? And then understanding there's no need for me to take that thing or action personally. So I noticed that it's just a really good time for me to be mindful of my inner dialogue, to make sure that I'm speaking lovingly to myself. It's a skill that I've been learning over the last several years, is speaking really lovingly to myself and not making assumptions about other people's motives or assuming the best about everyone. It might sound a little naive, but I do believe that by focusing on the best in everyone around us, we bring that out more. And by focusing on the best case scenario, we bring that out more, as opposed to focusing on the worst case scenario and focusing on the worst in others. And it's easier and easier to do that when you're not stressed. So when you're stressed out, as Dr. Joe Dispenza says, when you are stressed out, you can't help but focus on the worst case scenario because that's survival. And whenever I notice myself focusing on the worst case scenario, I know that it means I'm in a stress state. And so mindfulness and meditation really helps to reduce stress and also to bring a certain awareness of what my inner dialogue is and how am I speaking to myself. Journaling really helps with that. And part of my daily morning routine is writing out what I'm thankful for and what I'm thankful for having manifested into my life, different blessings, and also what I'm hoping to bring into my life more joy, more self-reflection, more satisfaction, more friendship, more travel experiences. I like to, journal about the things that I love having in my life. And I wouldn't mind if I enjoyed more of those things, more inner peace, more calm, those kinds of things. So I don't bring anything new into my food diet, but I do bring more into my mental diet and certain behaviors or habits that really support me in that time of the month, because it is a very sensitive time, especially with plunging progesterone and estrogen. But the good news is whenever you're in that, especially pre-PMS period, every day gets you one day closer to the first 10 days of your cycle, which are awesome. You have rising hormones, rising estrogen, and you get so much energy and you want to be social and want to be around people, mostly because of fertility reasons. Let's be real, it's so that you can get pregnant. But we do get those boosts, and why not take advantage of feeling attractive, feeling sexy, feeling social, feeling, extroverted and all those things, and enjoying that time, to do the things that we love to do. And for me, a lot of that comes down to being with people that I love, socializing, feeling good in my skin and my body, and going out and surrounding myself with people that I love being around, which it's easy to avoid when you work for yourself and you spend a lot of time on your own. And I love my solitude, but I always try to take advantage of this first. Anywhere between 10 to 15 days of your cycle, you're going to be feeling extra sexy, extra smart. You are going to have, just a lot of benefits from those rising hormones. And they are real benefits. And everything works a little better. Everything is a little quicker, sharper. You're clever. All these things are working in your favor. So, why not take advantage? So again, another long-winded answer to a question. Maybe I should just put a timer here, and I'll do that for the next episode. Just do 2 minutes for every question and try to answer it as quick as I can as a kind of a lightning round, and I'll be able to get through more of these questions instead of being so long-winded. But your questions are so fantastic. They really help me to draw out certain connections and draw out certain things because I know that you're listening. And I appreciate you being here and listening to me so that I can devote this time to making these connections and bringing these things out. Sophia ARIIG asks, what do you think about metabolic flexibility? Should you bring yourself in and out of ketosis? Should you add some ancestral food rotations on a yearly or monthly basis? So I answered this question a little bit before with the previous one. And I also wanted to let you know that I asked Dr. Ken Berry this question on the podcast episode that we recorded yesterday. It's going to be out next week. So we talked about cycling in and out of ketosis, and the answer is kind of similar. I do believe that this is the way that we're meant to be, that we're meant to have our metabolic flexibility always at the ready and engaged and activated. And you should be able to burn either sugar or fat. I like to predominantly be fat adapted and be fat fueled because I get the benefit of the expression of ketones, providing mental clarity, providing me with this stable moods, stable low blood sugar. And I really like all of those benefits. I believe that's how our bodies were designed to be. So the thought of cycling in and out of a fat-filled state doesn't make sense to me. When people talk about cycling in and out of ketosis, I think it sounds like something dangerous because, as many of you know, we have this association to, ketosis and diabetic ketoacidosis, which is a very real risk, especially for type 1 diabetics, where we go into this hyperacidity, and it can happen for someone, especially who is a type 1 diabetic. It can happen in certain rare cases for someone who is on specific medications. I believe SGLT1 inhibitors can have some, complications with ketoacidosis, but the process or the state of ketogenesis is where your body is producing ketones. That's why I like to talk about ketogenesis, ketone genesis, the genesis of ketones. That is not really, it doesn't have the same association as ketosis does to, ketoacidosis. It doesn't sound as similar, and it places more of an emphasis on the fact that you're fat fueled and your body is making ketones. Ketones can have an acidity to them, but that doesn't mean it's a dangerous state. The body was designed this way. The body has amino acids, it has digestive acids, and ketones are ketone acids, but that doesn't mean that amino acids or digestive acids are dangerous for you or your body. Your body is hyper intelligent. It knows how to deal with all of these things. It knows how to compartmentalize different things. It knows how to keep you safe. It knows how to keep you at your optimal pH. It knows how to do all these things as long as you're giving it the right building blocks. I don't think that cycling in and out of ketosis is something that needs to be done. For myself personally, it can depend and vary on the individual depending on their health. And it's great to always consult, especially with a doctor. If you have any health conditions, you're on any medications, you need to know that doing a keto diet is safe for you. But for the average healthy person, there's no need that I see to be cycling in and out of ketosis. To me, when I hear these things, I hear that there is a desire for a carbohydrate component to be there. And I'm not here to demonize carbohydrates. I just think that they're non-essential to the body. And I myself struggled over the years with addiction to sugar and food addiction. I've never had food addiction to protein and fats. I have dealt with food addiction to sugar and carbohydrates. So my perspective always is biased towards carbohydrates. It's not to say that there aren't any healthy ones out there. I love and embrace low starch carbs, all the green veggies especially that are full of micronutrients and also provide the body with a lot of benefits. I don't see benefit to food products that are really highly addictive, hyper palatable, that are comfort foods, that are carbohydrates that we have kind of grown up with. If there's any food addiction issues there, if there's any dieting, sort of yo-yo dieting, cycling in and out of things, it just doesn't sound healthy to me. So that's my perspective on ketogenesis. I don't think there's anything wrong with being in a perpetual state where your body is being primarily fueled from fat. You're never fueled from one or the other completely. You're always fueled from either glucose dominantly and fat on a secondary level, or you're fueled from fat primarily and glucose on a secondary level. So I like to be a primary fat burner, and that means I'm keto adapted, I'm fat adapted, I'm burning fat on my body and dietary fat for energy primarily. And I'm providing my body with the essentials that it needs. So someone can also fuel themselves from carbohydrates, but there's a lot of other things that can come with that, and that can lead to glycation, oxidation, having persistently high blood sugar, having too much sugar in the blood, because carbohydrates have this hedonic effect where they are highly addictive, they're hyperpalatable, they can override our satiety signaling, they can cause insulin to skyrocket and crash, and they can create a lot of patterns that are not necessarily the most optimal for having stable, healthy blood sugar, having and avoiding chronic disease and autoimmunity. Inflammation can be also caused by eating a lot of carbohydrate. There's so many reasons why eating a lot of carbohydrate can be detrimental. And that's why on keto, carbohydrate still plays a role, but it is controlled so that we have this number. It varies from person to person, but say 20 grams of carb total or 40 grams of carb total, whatever that number is for you personally. The reason that that's there is so that the most nutrient dense carbs are emphasized versus the least. So a chocolate bar, which is not an ideal, I'm talking about a chocolate bar that's, artificially sweetened or sweetened with sugar or corn syrup, that any kind of candy or that kind of thing is going to be so high in carb and so devoid of nutrients that it'll get someone to their carb total for the day. So then it kind of forces you to make a choice. Do I want to have this one, tub of ice cream / bag of candy or chocolate bar or whatever it is, bag of potato chips, Freudian slip there, or, pizza or whatever it is, French fries. Do I want to have just that one, or do I want to eat all of these nutrient dense, lower starch vegetables, which tend to be the green veggies? They tend to add, I'm not saying it's only green veggies, but they tend to be the vegetables that are lowest in starch, that are full of nutrients, and yet they support our satiety because they are nutrient dense. Something like a bag of candy or a bag of potato chips or a pizza or French fries, those things don't support satiety. They don't support proper nourishment in the body. And so to me, they're a net negative versus being a net positive. And low starch carbohydrates and vegetables, they in general are a net positive unless someone has major autoimmune reactions or conditions that don't support eating those kinds of foods. For the most part, vegetables are net negative, and they can add a lot of nutrition to our foods. And the more nutrient dense our food is, the more satiety we have, which is why people struggle with eating a lot on keto. It's why some people struggle with gaining weight on keto. I didn't have that problem myself, but a lot of people, I had my satiety, hunger, and fullness hormones were so out of whack and so unbalanced from eating high carb, no fat for so many years that it took me a while to heal my body and to be able to reconnect with my sense of intuitive eating. And if you're interested in intuitive eating, I just did a podcast last week, which is only about the definition of intuitive eating and why keto has helped me and helps other people reclaim intuitive eating. But the basis for that really comes down to having balanced hormones and proper hormone signaling. We can't actually manufacture our hormones properly without having the right amount of essential protein and fat in order to do that. So all of this goes back to the question of cycling in and out of ketosis. And the main answer to it is I don't believe that for myself, it's something that I need to do. I don't know for everyone out there, because I do believe that humans in general, although we have bio-individuality, there's also a lot we have in common on a biological level, and we have biological sort of commonalities between us, that the body is designed to burn fat for fuel, and that's why we store it so well. And I just don't like the idea of having to cycle in and out of something that sounds to me a lot more stressful than just having metabolic flexibility and being either predominantly fat-fueled or sugar-fueled, as opposed to just cycling. The idea of cycling in and out of things. Your other part to your question was adding in ancestral food rotations on a yearly or monthly basis. So, look, if you're someone who really likes to eat certain carbohydrates like root vegetables, or you love summer berries, or there's just foods out there that are higher starch that are kind of in between you and being keto, I think it's more useful to investigate more of a paleo low carb approach, Because if you're someone who loves to eat higher starch carbs and you're trying to force yourself to do keto because keto is popular at the moment, or because you've seen a lot of anecdotes of people thriving on keto, if you're someone who loves eating high starch carbs and you force yourself into this keto model, I just don't think that you're going to thrive on it, because you're just going to be thinking about how much you miss all these starches and higher, more carby foods. And if you want to be more fueled from those kinds of foods, fueled from starches, fueled from sugar, I think there's healthy ways of doing that. And you can be fueled from those foods as well. I mean, carbs are carbohydrates and fats are hydrates of carbon. Like, they really are sort of the flip side of the coin to each other. They're both energy. They're different forms of it. And if you are not overdoing your carbohydrate intake and you're not eating, quote unquote, unhealthy carbs, you're focused on whole, real food carbohydrates, I don't see anything wrong with being fueled from that. You might even be in ketosis. That's why testing and tweaking can help so much. If you're an active person and you do a lot of exercise, you might be able to get into state of ketogenesis if that's something that you're interested in, for a lot of the benefits that come with it, even while eating a higher carb diet. So I wouldn't say that you necessarily need to do it on a seasonal pattern. And I'm not laughing at that at all. I like the idea of it. It sounds really nice, like seasonal, eating, or seasonal carb binging, and not binging, but seasonal carb adaptation or something like that sounds great. And there are different seasons of the year. There is summertime when, if you're eating in season, maybe berries are more available, as opposed to eating them in the dead of winter when we really shouldn't probably be eating certain fruits that, bananas and tropical mangoes should probably not be consumed in winter because of their sodium potassium balance will signal the body different things, that it's summertime when it's actually wintertime. That's a whole other topic. But if you're talking about eating with the seasons, I do like that idea. And if you're someone who really likes to eat carbs, I'm not here to demonize carbs. I just think if you're prioritizing your essential macronutrients, protein, getting the essential fats, there's nothing wrong with being fueled from carbohydrates if that's something that you love. I personally do better and thrive better myself not doing that. I prefer to be lower in carb and eat more protein and fat. And, it can also have to do with your biological makeup, your ancestry. You got to try and test different things to find where you thrive. And please don't go by whatever's hot at the moment or whatever's trendy, because it may not be the optimal thing for you, especially if you're pushing at it and you're not enjoying it. I mean, all of this stuff and doing keto for me is so much fun. I don't miss eating the foods that dysregulated my blood sugar and didn't make me feel good and personally didn't help me connect with intuitive eating or, perpetuated food addiction for me. Being keto is way more fun for me. I love being keto and I love having sort of control starches and really eating more healthy fats. I love delicious fats. I love delicious proteins. And it may have something to do with my ancestral heritage. I would probably know more about it if I did some DNA testing of some form. I just don't know what my opinion is on all of that yet. But even without doing any of that kind of testing, you can just try different things out for yourself. And I always encourage people to test and try things. So, try out this seasonal eating, try out doing lower carb, less carb, higher protein, less protein, more fat, low fat. It's the only way that you're going to figure out what really works for you is by testing it out. It's not by copying what someone else is doing. And I don't mean copying in a negative way, but let's say emulating what someone else is doing because they got great results. Although I do think learning from other people and seeing someone who got great results and saying, well, let me try that out for myself, but being really mindful if you get results that you are looking for or not from that, and not just sticking with it because you tried it out and someone else had a good result. So I really, really encourage that. And I do see a lot of questions about cycling in and out of ketosis and eating seasonally and eating more carb or having more sweeteners or those kinds of things. Like if keto and restricting carbohydrates is a struggle for you, there's so many other spaces in the low carb spectrum where you might do something more like Whole30 or paleo and something just low carb. Low carb could be closer to somewhere between 10 and 20% carbohydrate intake. Keto is very, very low carb, 5% or less of your total calories coming from carb. And some people thrive on that, some people won't. That's the bottom line. The only way to figure it out is to test it out for yourself. And that's how you'll know if you thrive on it or not by asking me, because I'm a food blogger and I'm just figuring out what works best for me. And I'm trying to share as much as I can what has worked well for me in case that might be helpful for someone else. But I'm not a trained nutritionist. I don't have training in these kinds of areas. I just like to geek out on biochemistry and the metabolism and learn about these things and podcast and blog about them because I find them fascinating. And I like to share different experiments and tinkering and testing that I do that works. When I find something that works, I get so pumped and so excited about it. And I get so excited to share about it because I know that if it worked for me, being that we have a lot of biochemistry in common as humans, it might work for someone else too. And then someone else might try that and see if it works for them or not. So that's a roundabout way to answer your question about adding in ancestral food rotations. And there are probably also some writers and authors who know more about that, who can speak specifically to it. Jack Stowe Wilson, hi, there is so much about keto with different messages. I want an easy guide to keto. And I also, can you feel when your body is in ketosis? I would like to see a daily plan. Also, is there some alternatives to breakfast that aren't shakes, bacon, eggs, or avo? I like yogurt, muesli, and fruit. So to answer your question, Tony, I believe this is Tony Jackson, there's a few questions kind of bundled into that one question there. So in terms of finding something easy, I have a free ebook at ketogenicgirl.com that is kind of a basic introduction to keto. My cookbook also covers a lot of that in the front matter. Can you feel when your body is in ketosis? I would say that some people say that they can tell that they don't need to test any numbers. It depends on how connected you are to your body personally. Some people can feel it. Some people it's psychological. Some people, like myself, I use a lot of testing to determine whether I'm in ketosis or not. And then I make correlations to how I feel. And that helps me identify what I'm feeling with being in ketosis. So some people don't need to do any of that and they just feel it. I'm not one of those people. I need to test and get data in order to sense it and then make connections between how I feel in my body when I'm in ketosis so that I can help me identify when I am. But I've also been in ketosis for so long because I've been testing for so long and I don't do cycling in and out. I don't do carb up days and those kinds of things. Even when I'm on holidays, I'm generally always in ketosis because it's where I feel my best. So I guess in a way you could say, I know I'm in ketosis when I feel at my best. If I ever have had days when I've gotten kicked out of ketosis, I can tell without testing because I don't feel as good. And it was kind of mind-blowing for me at the beginning when I would kick myself out of ketosis when I was first kind of learning about keto. And I didn't realize how good I could feel until I felt how bad I could feel when I was out of it, that I realized that I was just feeling bad all the time in my body. And it wasn't until I had this higher energy, mental clarity, all these other benefits to being in this ketogenesis that I realized that that's how I wanted to feel all the time. And you hear that from a lot of people. I've heard that repeated quite often from people that they didn't actually know that their norm could be so leveled up from where it was until they experienced being in that, ketogenesis for a long period of time and then being kicked out of it and going, oh, wow, that was my normal before. And I just didn't know. I thought I was doing okay. I knew it wasn't great, but when you feel really great, really fantastic, and then you get kicked out of it, you're like, I just don't want to ever feel that way or experience that. I just want to feel great all the time. And I'm a maximizer type personality and optimizer. So I just want to maximize every day that I have on earth here feeling at my best. And that's why I've been in ketosis. And that's why it's easy and fun for me to follow a keto diet and to do all of this because I love the results that I get from it. So that's to answer your question about feeling your way to ketosis. I also have a lot of hacks and videos about how to test ketosis for really, budget friendly ways and really budget friendly ways. And, you can get breath alcohol meters and correlate your blood sugar and your ketones by doing testing. I'm going to do an episode on that next week as well. So I like to share budget friendly tips, but if you're lucky enough to be able to feel when you're in ketosis, more power to you. And that shows that you're really connected to your body. And I think that's a wonderful thing. In my cookbook, Keto Essentials, I do have some breakfasts that are not bacon and eggs. I do have smoothies. I have sort of a breakfast oatmeal, keto oatmeal kind of thing. I have breakfast bars. I do have yogurt in there, I believe, as well. But you can do Greek yogurt, with some low starch berries, or Greek yogurt with some kind of keto granola. Or there's so many recipes that you can find online if you search for those things. And they definitely can be keto. And what I mean by that is that they're lower in starch. And so you're able to eat them without kind of wondering if you're in ketosis or not. So I think that was all the parts to your question. Keto Tiger said, I get dry skin on my face and I drink plenty of water. And any advice? So I actually asked this question with Dr. Barry yesterday. I had asked you a follow-up question. What is your keto diet like? And Dr. Barry answered the question also on the podcast, which will be out early next week if you want to listen to that. But you replied, basically breakfast, eggs with butter, coffee, and double cream. Lunch, tuna, mayo, salad with peppers, grated cheese. Dinner, keto chili with avocado. Snacks, Baby Bell, nuts, dark chocolate, only if I'm hungry. Of course, it varies. I will have rump steak on some nights with avocado. Sometimes I have keto pizza. And the longer on keto, the worse it gets. If I have a carb day, it seems to clear. So I'm not sure why that might be for you as an individual. I know most people have had improvements in skin conditions doing low carb and keto because you're providing your body with a lot of healthy fats, which have fat soluble vitamins. Like vitamin E is so good for the skin. It's also very detoxifying because you're cutting out a lot of sugar and processed foods. But if you find that a higher carb keto approach keeps your skin clearer, then you might just want to go with that and try that. Dr. Barry's opinion was more that it could be some higher carb foods that a person is eating. That means they're not really fully in ketosis. And so they're kind of still dealing with issues from the past. But it sounds like in your situation, when you eat more carbs, your skin clears more. So in that case, I would just keep tinkering and testing with that and, either cut out more carbs all the way, things like carb replacement foods like keto pizza, dark chocolate, a lot of nuts, and these things can add up to the fact that you might not actually be in ketosis. You might just be low carb. And that's also a great place to be. I wouldn't necessarily say that the keto is the cure to all things out there, everywhere, all kinds of skin related issues and all of that. But I do see that for the most part, like Dr. Barry himself, he went to keto because he had a lot of unresolved skin issues that cleared up when he went keto. And so, he tended to be of the opinion that it was the fact that someone might not be in ketosis or they're eating foods that are generating those problems. Skin related conditions can be related to autoimmunity as well. So I think that's why his answer in particular has to do with autoimmune reactions. Say if you have leaky gut and high inflammation and that's being caused from a high carb diet, that keto may need to be a little bit more strict in order to see those changes. But then, there's also something called keto rash, which happens when people are detoxifying. The skin organ is one of the biggest detoxification organs in the body. And so sometimes when we're in fat loss or burning fat for fuel, the body is releasing a lot of toxins that it stores in fat. And a lot of heavy metals and toxins are stored in our fat in order to keep it away from our organs. And so those toxins come out when we're losing fat, and it can cause a lot of breakouts, skin rashes, and things. So eating higher carb, like adding more berries into your diet or eating more carb, kind of slows down that process a bit. So you're dipping a little bit less into that fat burning mode. And maybe that detoxification needs to happen at a slower, more gradual level if you're getting strong reactions. So I think it depends on the person, and the best way to figure it out is just to keep tinkering and testing with it and seeing. But, that those could be some of the reasons why. And you can listen to Dr. Barry's answer on the podcast episode next week as well. It's a great question, though. Jody Lee, 1974, I'm going to end on this question. She says, going to the bathroom, I'm only able to go about every 3 days. Bowel movements, is that normal? I don't eat many veggies. What do you recommend? So this comment got a lot of replies from people, and a lot of it had to do with, adding in electrolytes, magnesium. Most of the common things that I see with regards to with constipation is that it's a lack of sodium, a lack of electrolytes. Magnesium can help because it acts as a osmotic laxative, so pulls water into the colon, which can cause contraction and movement. But it's not something that's good to rely on, taking magnesium citrate, especially every day. One of the things that happens with keto is you're eating less fiber. There has to be this adjustment to the fact that you're not going to be producing as much waste. If you're putting in less waste, you're going to be excreting less waste. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. Sometimes, especially, we're conditioned to constantly be eating tons and tons of fiber and to be constantly going to the bathroom every day, twice a day, more than that. And then when you reduce your fiber intake, you just don't have as much waste to eliminate. And that causes people to sometimes react and think that the body's no longer eliminating. It still is eliminating. It's designed and built to eliminate, but it may not be eliminating as much. And there's an adjustment psychologically to that can come. I find one of the most effective things beyond sodium and magnesium is fermented foods, sauerkraut. Probiotics are debatable. I still take them, even though I've heard from certain physicians and people in our space that they're not super effective. I find that they are effective for me. It may be the kind that I have. It may be just the way my gut health is. But sauerkraut, fermented foods, prebiotic foods have tons of probiotics in them to help your gut microbiome, which does a lot of digesting of our food for us. And I find that eating a bunch of fermented foods can be really, really helpful for that. Always consult with your doctor if you're having chronic constipation. It's really important to be regularly eliminating, but sometimes it's just related to electrolytes, upping your sodium intake. I try to add 1 to 2 teaspoons a day, sometimes 1 to 2 tablespoons a day of sea salt, depending of where I am and what I'm craving, and really listening to my body and what it wants. If it's thirsty or if it's not thirsty, drinking water, but also making sure to maintain the electrolyte intake is really important on keto. Magnesium citrate is great for temporary relief, and fermented foods, and also just, adjusting your psychological expectations of how much waste needs to be eliminated. Those are just a few things that I know can be helpful. So those are some of the common themes that I see. I'm going to wrap up this episode today with these questions, and I'll be doing a second part, probably also a third part to these questions so that I can try to answer all of them that were asked, and some of the ones that I especially see that are asked on a regular basis. Oh, there was one I did want to address. So someone asked, Keto Runner 13, do you feel better, healthier when eating carnivore versus keto? So I'm still very much eating a ketogenic diet. I do more of an emphasis on protein and fat these days, but I still eat dark chocolate. I still eat low starch veggies, especially probiotic foods like fermented sauerkraut. I really listen to my body, and I try to just prioritize the essential nutrients that it needs, especially with organ meats. And I also take liver capsules as well to supplement with that. But I'm still very much keto. I wouldn't say that I'm necessarily carnivore. I like to still enjoy dark chocolate on occasion. I've always loved salads. I don't eat as much of them as I used to, but there are certain foods, especially in summer salads, avocado. These are kinds of things that, low starch veggies like cooked asparagus and things. I don't think that there's any reason to exclude all plant foods unless you have some unresolved health issues that you could potentially try excluding plants and see how you do. But to answer your question, I'm not carnivore per se. I'm more of keto carnivore, but I do feel better emphasizing more protein and fat and having more of a meat-based approach to my diet overall. But I'm not fully carnivore. I think to me, being a strict carnivore really is not having any kinds of non-animal foods like dark chocolate or salad or avocados or those kinds of foods. So it's not something that I feel the need to ever just write off completely for myself. It's just there's nutrients in plant foods that are there that I like. I still enjoy having dark chocolate on occasion because it's just something that I enjoy. So I do feel better eating more protein and eating more fat. And that's just always what my keto diet's been. I just have been off of sweeteners for a couple of years now. So my dark chocolate is very, very bitter. And I just don't eat as many sort of carbs as I used to that I found to be more bloating, especially like broccoli, cauliflower, and cabbage. I used to eat so much raw cabbage. Now I do more of the fermented kind, which really, really helps me with digestion. And broccoli and cauliflower, I don't really eat a ton of anymore. They cause a lot of bloating for me. And the same goes for nightshades. I just haven't really fully re-embraced those. Peppers, tomatoes, eggplants, potato I didn't eat anyway, but I do love eggplant and peppers, so we'll see how that goes. If I have a craving for them, I did have some when I was in Asia because I had a lot of curries and stuff, but if it's something that I want to enjoy, I will for sure, especially more in the summer months, when those kinds of things are more appealing to me. So I hope that answers your question, and I hope I got to answer questions that, were useful for a lot of you out there. Please leave me feedback and engage with me, whether it's on Instagram or you can tweet me at Ketogenic Girl on Twitter. I love hearing your feedback. What do you want to hear more of? What episodes are your favorite kinds? I try to have a really diverse kind of format for the podcast. I like to have an expert guest on every week, and I like to do these Q&A episodes, and then also sort of solo cast, like a micro podcast when there's just one topic in particular I want to talk about, like intuitive eating. So I think that does keep the podcast pretty diverse, but if there's things that you want me to emphasize more, I love the idea of having more guests on who've had success stories with my program or with keto in general. And so that is something that I'm going to be doing more of. Thanks to that wonderful feedback that I received over Instagram. So please do leave me a rating or review if you enjoyed the podcast. Share it with someone who you think might enjoy it as well. It helps me to devote more of my time to getting to do this, and it's my favorite thing to do each week. So until the next episode, I hope you have a fat-filled rest of your week. Bye for now. All right, guys, thank you so much for being here today and tuning in. I would like to invite you to check out the 20-Day Ketogenic Girl Challenge. A lot of the things that we talked about on today's episode, I find are really solved by doing a ketogenic meal plan like the one that I designed, the 20-Day Ketogenic Girl Challenge. And a lot of that comes down to having someone already calculate everything for you, having the macros all dialed in for you, having this meal plan with all the portions already outlined for you. It really helps address a lot of the portion control issues, and having everything calculated already really helps with preparation and doing batch prep. A lot of people on the challenge will pick out a day, say on Saturday or Sunday, and they'll meal prep ahead for the week, and they'll pick 2 or 3 days from the plan that they love, and they'll repeat it, such as day 5, which has the burger with my special keto burger sauce, and repeat that. And you can do that as many times as you like, and it really makes preparation and following keto and the meal plans a lot easier, and doing that batch prepping and meal prep on the weekend. And the meal plans also come with a shopping list. They come with a full guide to testing yourself for ketosis. And the best part is they include my support and coaching in our members Facebook group, which is an awesome community. I love being in there, and it really helps so much having other people doing this program with you and alongside, and people who've done it already and successfully reached their goals there to inspire you and to support you. And having that community built in is so important. Our success rates go way, way up when we're doing any kind of diet or lifestyle change when we have a buddy. And I'm here to be your buddy, to be your guide, and help you with your journey, because you can post any questions that you have about keto, about the meal plans, about low carb, and I am there to answer your questions and to support you as you go. And I just think it makes such a big difference to have a coach and a support group and a supportive community around you. So check out the 20-Day Ketogenic Girl Challenge. Just a word of caution, there is another 20-day keto challenge that's being sold. It is not mine. I only sell my program from ketogenicgirl.com. So if you see a link to that, it's a copycat version that has kind of popped up in the last year. It also has a similar name, 20-Day Ketogenic Challenge. But if you are looking for my program, which comes with my support and coaching, you can only get it from ketogenicgirl.com, and make sure that you are purchasing the one from me, because I have some people who have purchased this other program thinking that it's my program, and the coaching and support is not included because it's not the program that I formulated and that has had so much success. If you want to read and check out some of the success stories, you can go to ketogenicgirl.com and click on testimonials and reviews or success stories, and you can read some of the dozens and dozens of success stories of people who have done the challenge. And if you join the program, you'll get to interact with so many of those people in the group who've had real success and are there to share tips and tricks for making all of this so much easier and so much fun. So check out the 20-Day Ketogenic Girl Challenge at ketogenicgirl.com. And until the next episode, I hope you have a fat-filled rest of your day. A few disclaimers. By listening to this podcast, you agree not to use this podcast as medical advice, as I am not a qualified healthcare provider. The information presented on this podcast is for educational purposes only. Ketogenic Girl is not qualified to provide medical advice. Consult your own physician for any medical issues that you may be having. This entire disclaimer also applies to any guests or contributors to this podcast. Prior to beginning a ketogenic diet, you should undergo a full health screening with your physician to confirm that a keto diet is suitable for you and to rule out any conditions or contraindications that may pose risk or that are incompatible with a ketogenic diet. A keto diet may or may not be appropriate for you if you have any kind of health condition, whether known to you or unknown, so you must consult your physician to find this out. Anyone under the age of 18 should consult with their physician and their parents or legal guardian.